I pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the
of the
flag
United States of
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 the
America,
United States of America,
and
to the republic
to the
which
republic
stands
for which it stands, one nation,
God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty
liberty,
and justice
justice
for
for all.
for all.
Okay, thank you. Kelly, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Cheney,
Here.
Menuda. I think Joe was having some trouble logging on. I'm gonna have to send him the invite again. O'Donnell,
Here.
Sassy,
Here.
Sierra, still on. Stiganga,
Here.
Tortel.
Hello?
Oh, Joel, you're here. Okay. Tortel.
I can,
No, Lori
I can
said she
barely
had.
hear you.
Tortel here yet? Not yet. Okay. Riskevich.
Here.
Okay. So we're just missing Tortel and Menuda for right now.
Okay. Okay, first up, we have Dr. Christine Young, President Orange County Community College, for discussion on the 2021 proposed budget. Dr. Young, you here?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Very good. Well, thank you, Chair Riskevich, and thank you, E&E, for the opportunity to present today. And I'd like to acknowledge, while I can't see you and I cannot see who's in the audience, I believe Chair Watson is listening in today, Trustee Hannes is listening, and Comptroller Agnes Wagner is listening. If there are others, they may be listening in as well, and I appreciate their support. So, Chair Riskevich, as you know, certainly you've heard so many times in committee, we are not in normal times. If these were normal times, this would not be the first conversation you and I would have about this proposed budget and our work on this budget, nor would it be the first conversation I would have had, Chair Watson would have had, and other members of the board have had with key leaders of the legislature about our thoughts about our upcoming year's budget. We would have had some one-on-one conversations and other meetings in anticipation of this moment. And indeed, this moment usually comes in May, where we meet with E&E and talk about this proposal, where it is still very much a proposed budget. But two things have happened here. First, both related to COVID-19. The first, of course, is COVID-19 happening, period, and the normal visits that we would have made with you in April and May were disrupted. And while we probably would have figured that out through phone calls and other technology, the second thing that happened, we heard coming in mid-April, and certainly was a full-fledged disruption by the end of April. Chair Riskevich, as you know, we have received news that you would have received as well, as a local entity in the state's budget, that we are anticipating very significant cuts to our budget from the state. Understandable in the sense that the state has not realized its revenue assumptions in its fiscal year due to the COVID-19 crisis. But the reality is hitting home as we were constructing this proposed budget. We've been working on this budget for a very long time. We start ramping up in December, preparing our next fiscal year's budget. So by April, and what I would say was getting to be a pretty mature budget, when we heard about the size of the potential cuts from the state, it really presented us with some very, very difficult choices about how to proceed. So the news that we got from SUNY at the end of April was to anticipate very likely being cut 30% or 50% by the state from the budget that was approved on April 2nd. Now, to underscore to all of you, that has not been made official, right? Like, we are waiting, like all of you, for that revised enacted budget to be passed from the budget director. I think the official word is transmitted from the budget director to the legislature, which would have 10 days to come up with a different plan. A lot of advocacy is being done at the federal level to try to drive some unrestricted dollars to the state to help with fill-in monies to localities. But the news that we are constantly getting is 30% or 50%. So as a quick reminder to E&E, if we take the high level, if we take the worst case scenario, a 50% cut from the state to Orange County Community College, based on last year's numbers, based on our 2019-2020 budget, a 50% cut, that would be 50% of just over $13 million. So we're looking at a little bit north of $6.5 million, somewhere between $6.5 and $7 million, which would blow a 10%, 11% hole in our budget immediately. And that is before working with you, our sponsor, and that is before reckoning with any enrollment difficulties we might have as we navigate this enrollment situation. This COVID-19 situation. So that, with that news, and we still await the confirmation of this, the size of this cut, which brings me to point number 2 about this not being normal times, is that last Wednesday is when our Board of Trustees had planned to pass the budget for 2020, 2021. And I asked for advice from Chair Waskiewicz, asked for advice and guidance from the county executive, as well as from some other, leaders in the county. And our Board of Trustees, I believe you would agree, took your advice, took wise advice, and delayed their passing and adoption of any budget until their next and last scheduled meeting of their fiscal year, of our fiscal year, which is June 3rd. Now, what will we know on June 3rd? We don't know, but that is really the last possible date that our trustees can pass a budget and still hit all the markers that we need to hit in order to have a budget intact so that we can start our fiscal year on September 1st. You may recall that when we passed the budget at the college with the Board of Trustees, it is quickly given to you at the county to move through your processes, where it is critiqued and moves through committee and is eventually, hopefully, approved by the legislature in late July or very early August. And we very quickly have to get it to Albany. So the SUNY Board of Trustees can approve it in August because we need it by September 1. We have to start our fiscal year on September 1 with SUNY's approval. So with that as a preamble, I just wanted to let you know the spot we are in. The trustees at this time are waiting to have that additional information and to construct the most fact-based budget they can, and to move it through the processes on June 3rd, and understanding that whatever happens after June 3rd, that they will hold administration of the college accountable for constantly adjusting to whatever happens after that. But they want it to be good stewards and have a budget, an initial budget that is closely reflected the reality of where we are as they could. So that is an uncommon preamble to our uncommon time. Chair Vaskevich, I would be pleased to pause because the remainder of my presentation, I could just give you the highlights of the budget that was under preparation since December and just give you the highlights of what had been worked on with great diligence and great work until all of this news from the state really threw a wrench in our process. But I can pause there if there would be any discussion around what you've just heard.
Yeah, well, I would just say, I know, thinking about the funding structure for the college with the three prongs, the county, state, and tuition. I know with the county, we do have that funding floor in place, and we're legally obligated to provide the same level of funding as we did the previous year. And I'm sure that you understand, given the situation the county's in, it's not going to be feasible for us to do any more than that. As you plan your budget, I'm sure you've probably factored that in already. But in terms of the budget, if you want to give some highlights, that would be, I think, appropriate, unless anyone has any questions so far.
Paul, just so you're aware, legislators Menuda and Tortel have joined.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So yeah, why don't you go ahead and give some of the quick highlights, and then if there's any questions, we'll answer them. If not, we'll move on.
Excellent. Thank you. So again, I will, and so with that comment, Sheriff Vaskevich, I will say, I hear you with that comment. So what I'm about to share with you, again, this budget, it took a lot to balance it. And I would say it's pre-COVID-19 thinking. So you will probably hear me say something that you're like, Dr. Young, I just told you about 0%, but I'm just going to qualify that what you're going to hear. It sounds like I'm ignoring that, but it is a pre-COVID-19 world that's built into this. So very, very quickly, I will tell you that, we have the usual challenges in this budget, which is that the state funding has never been at 1/3 of its share. We have the usual challenge of our enrollment, where our typical 18-year-old so-called traditional student continues to be in decline in New York and in the Northeast. While we have our salaries under control, it's the health insurance that is skyrocketing on us, and that in terms of trying to find savings, that we have gone to the well of departmental so many times that we cannot find too much more savings, barely anything left to carve out of departmental savings. The unusual challenges, as we've discussed, our recent tack-ons, we've discussed the state uncertainty. It's worth mentioning now we have enrollment uncertainty. How many times have I sat with you, E&E committee, and we've talked about how it's actually in times of recession where community colleges tend to have increases in enrollment. But literature says, all the readings I'm doing keeps underscoring we've never had a recession coupled with a worldwide pandemic. And we could spend some time talking about this because this is interesting about students who may have been going to Binghamton and Buffalo. Wouldn't they come to the college? But there are other populations of students that we worry are not going to come to the college. So that's a longer conversation, but we have enrollment uncertainty now to worry about. We also would remind you that while we were able to successfully complete the staff chair union negotiation, thank you, E&E, and thank you, other committees and legislature for passing that on April 3rd. We do have an open faculty association contract, so that is unresolved, and that has some budget uncertainty in it. Our revenue assumptions, this is pre-COVID-19 thinking here. So our enrollment assumptions, we decided to project an FTE, that's full-time equivalent, to budget a full-time equivalent that matches our current fiscal year's actual enrollment. So another way of saying that is our budgeted full-time equivalent is less than our previous year's budgeted enrollment, but it is the same as our actual student enrollment in the current fiscal year. Another assumption is that the Board of Trustees did pass tuition and fees at their April meeting, So the budget does assume a $192 tuition increase. And I would remind you that $192 in SUNY lingo represents $192 for the full-time student for the full academic year. So put another way, it would be less than $100 for the full-time student per semester. So if you're taking 12 credit hours or more in the fall semester, it would be less than a $100 tuition increase. Another assumption was a decrease in state aid. You may recall the April 2nd state budget did not memorialize the floor, did not memorialize kind of like what you have at the county, which is that you can't go below a certain amount. It reverted to the volume-based formula, which is a 3-year rolling average. So in SUNY Orange's case, that would move us backward just a little bit over $400,000, unfortunately. So that is not good news for us. The assumption also included a 2% increase in county aid, which would be a $381,000 increase. And Chair Roskevich, I heard you earlier. Of course, I would hope, we need support more than ever, but I heard your message earlier. A very modest increase of $13,000 in chargeback revenues from other counties, a significant increase in revenue, $565,000 from an increase in student fees. When the trustees increased tuition, they also increased student fees, and we would estimate that at $565,000. And also due to the good work of Agnes Wagner and her group in the business office, we are switching banks for our cash, and they have identified a bank that will generate interest on our cash balance that will add $110,000 to our coffers on the revenue side. That is a huge increase for us. So on terms of revenues, we were projecting for 2020, 2021, pre-COVID-19, that this would keep the County of Orange at its always generous, always loyal support percentage of our revenue of 31%. We would put the state of New York at 21%. I'm sorry, did I say 31% for the County of Orange? 31% for the County of Orange, 21% for the state of New York. Student tuition would be at 37% plus 5% in student fees. So unfortunately, students would be at 42%, and then the remaining 6% with others, which is mostly chargeback. In terms of expense assumptions, we are 87% of our expenses are wrapped up in salary and benefits. As I mentioned, we did settle with Staff and Chair, and we are in the second year of a settled CSEA contract, so there are salary increases agreed to with both of those unions. We do anticipate a 6% health insurance increase in January 2021 when that negotiated increase would kick in January. We did delete permanently a number of positions from the college. These were positions that were held vacant in the current year, but they were deleted permanently on purpose in order to realize permanent cost savings. And while many more positions were held an extended vacancy factor, just extending out how long we would hold positions vacant. And those two things together would give us in excess of $1 million worth of savings. And then additionally, in professor positions, faculty positions that we needed to replace, that we felt we had to replace, moving someone who had retired from a full professor position, who had 30 or so years at the institution, and replacing them at an instructor level. That would save us nearly $300,000. And then finally, even though I said we have squeezed our departments dry, thanks again to Agnes Wagner and her team, we did find another $150,000 in the departments. So at the time of when the board approved the tuition increase and fee increase in April, we still had about a $1.4 million gap between expenses and projected expenses and projected revenues. And with those actions I just described, administration did some very hard work to find $1.4 million. And we did close that gap. We were very, very proud of the work we did, maintaining the mission of the college, serving students the way we wanted to serve them, continuing to grow in the ways that we wanted to grow in workforce and with guided pathways and so many of the things that that we were talking with you about. And then this news from the state is just really upsetting at this time about how we will continue moving forward with the size of those cuts. So the last thing I would say before inviting questions and conversation is that, again, this pre-COVID-19 budget, the overall balanced proposed budget for the college came in at $62.4 million. That was balanced, and compare that to the previous year at $62.5 million budget. So while I appreciate that when you're dealing with dollars that large, that is essentially equal, I am proud that we're not increasing. We are about staying even. In fact, we are about $100,000 lighter than we were the previous year, which I think is a signifier of how seriously we are taking our fiscal responsibility at the college. So I appreciate always our relationship with the county, and particularly this committee. This is going to be a summer like no other for all of us, I'm sure, but not particularly, for all of us, period. There's going to be a lot of work for this college in the weeks and months ahead as we react to if these state cuts are as big as all indicators are, and then watching an enrollment pattern that is truly unprecedented. There's no book on this one. So we are grateful for the relationship that we've built up over time, and look forward to staying in contact with you about this budget and all other matters with the college. So Chair Oskevich, I'd be pleased to talk about what you've heard here and any other questions you have about the college.
Okay, yeah, just to clarify, that 62.4 million, that was pre-COVID assumptions, and you still don't know yet what the impact is going to be in the end.
Correct.
Okay. With that, yeah, I'll open up if any legislators have questions.
Menuda?
Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for that description and detail. Thinking about what's happening with COVID and all of the unemployment that's out there, typically what we'll see is a rebound back into the educational system to where those who are on unemployment are going to need education classes, et cetera, to get back into the workforce. Some learning new technologies and methods, and others simply learning a new job, perhaps. I don't know that all of small business or even big business is going to go back to business as usual. And some people may need to develop new skill sets. So I was wondering if the college has thought about any of that going forward. And that could be a game changer for some of the financial situations and downturn in education that we've been seeing. Any thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. Anyone who will listen to me, I've been talking about that aspect of the college, that we're the sector of higher education that can do 8-week classes or 1-semester classes, or you know from your own background, a 2-year full-time program to have a highly technical program to lead right to workforce. So yes, we are thinking about that. I think the trick this time around is particularly on the more the non-credit side, that short-term side, is will the federal government in particular, and maybe it's the state government as well, but I think it's going to have to be the federal government, but will the federal government be there with the programs to help the individuals who just lost their jobs, particularly in the service sectors, invest in higher education? So rewinding back to the illusion I made about what's our enrollment going to look like in the fall. It is true. Our admissions office is getting calls from individuals who thought they were going to Buffalo and Binghamton and out of state and asking about SUNY Orange. So these are typically students who may not have looked at us as their first choice in years gone by. And I hope that you all have seen that our marketing and advertising group has made some really great choices about placing ads on CNN, on cable. Postcards maybe have gone to your house, emphasizing we're local, we're safe, we're affordable, we're high quality. To instead of students taking a gap year, why wouldn't you come to SUNY Orange? So we're trying to hit this message, come see us. So we intend to pick up students who might have gone to residential college out of the county. But Mr. Menuda, I'm worried about the student that you just described who may be out of work right now, the unemployed student, might have been coming to us already. They might have been coming part-time, and they might have been working at, the BribWorks or, Benora's or something. They might have had working part-time and working part-time and going to school part-time. And, do they have the resources right now to come to school? And that's where we need to be able to stitch together the right patchwork of programs to put people to work. So that's where we've got to spend. We've got to find some time this summer to do advocacy and then put this together for students and connect them to these programs and to get them to the college. But you're on the bead. You've got it right. And this is a place where, I remember the county executive being at one of the meetings about 6 months ago and saying, like, hey, when employers come to the county, we've got to connect them to the college. This is a version of this conversation. Like, is this a place where, legislators and the county can help with all of the good work that's going on right now, keeping people, fed and mentally healthy? Can we also connect people with programs to help them find these jobs that are available, and how the college can help stand them up and get them the skills they need for these jobs? That's my hope. That's my dream right now. That's the infrastructure is here. You all have invested in this college for 70 years. So now's the time to deploy it, not the time to diminish it. And that's my message.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, with that, Dr. Young, I just want to thank you for all the hard work you and your staff are doing with this budget. I know you're in a very difficult position, as all of us are these days, and I do appreciate you coming and giving us an update of the budget and where it stands now, and hopefully we can all work through this together. So thank you.
Great, thank you. And I will stay in touch with you because we're in an uncommon cycle now with the with the June 3rd meeting coming up, I assume E&E doesn't have a meeting before then. So, Chair Raskovich, I will make a special point of staying in touch with you as we learn things from the state and how our trustees are managing that, so we don't fall out of communication on this here.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Okay, very good. Thank you all, and everyone stay healthy, stay safe.
Okay, thank you. Next up,
All right, thank you.
Next up, we have Bill Fioravanti, Director of Economic Development, for his monthly update. I know Bill did provide a written update, which was very good. So if anyone has, hopefully everyone's read that. If anyone has questions on that, I'll take them now, and then Bill can proceed with anything else he wants to update us on. Any questions on Bill's update? No? Okay, Bill, floor is yours.
All right, super. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for the opportunity here, as always, to update you. This is a very different kind of report, as my last couple of written reports have been. What I wanted to spend this time on, I don't want to take too much time here. I wanted to first basically tell you what the department's been working on, how the county is, especially the Economic Development Office, has been responding here during this pandemic. And then I really want to talk to what everyone is concerned with now, which is reopening our economy and getting businesses back to work. So those are the things I want to touch on. I am going to share my screen a couple of times so people can see what web pages I'm going to be referring to. But I understand not everyone has the video capability, so I'll try and describe it exactly where we are and mention some website addresses and such, and not focus too much on it. But first of all, just talking about what we've been working on. Well, normally I'm working in a space with certainly small businesses, but also larger businesses. Large searches for real estate and various projects like that, and frankly, a lot of that has been on the back burner. We've had more activity in that in the last few weeks, where I think people are settling into the new normal. But developers and folks that have been pushing projects through their approval process are really back at it, wanting to get moving again. But for the most part, my department, as well as teamed up with tourism and Steve Knob from Employment and Training, we've really been in basically a hotline for local businesses looking for some help during this time. They've been struggling, obviously, since this started. The issues, the questions, the problems have changed over time. They've, evolved, shifted as we've moved through the process and through the response from various levels of government. But basically, we've served as a kind of a triage for businesses, and pardon that description, certainly mean no disrespect to the people that are really on the front line here, but that's really a good description of what we've done, because we've helped local businesses and employees, for that matter. Got a lot of calls from people that are concerned about the safety of their workplace, or of course looking for unemployment insurance and such. So they're looking for that help as well. But mostly businesses, we've tried to make make clear the information that's come from all these different sources, help weed out the misinformation, and then point people to all the resources, whether it's the Department of Labor or SBA or our local partners like the IDA. We certainly made a number of referrals to them and to the accelerator. We've put on a number of webinars, again, teaming with tourism and ETA, a number of them. We had some on the county's Facebook page and hosted by County Executive Newhouse. Some we've done for particular municipalities that have asked. We did it for all municipal leaders. And then based on that, we had a number of municipal leaders call and say, hey, we'd like you to do that for our local businesses. We've done that. And we've had some calls that have 60, 70, 80 businesses that are on those municipal calls. So those have been good as well. We've talked to hundreds of businesses easily. I'd say close to 800, 900 at least, if you total who I've talked to, Amanda and her team and Steve Knobb's larger team. They've talked to a lot of people. I think they've talked to 1,000 people just about unemployment insurance. So that's been of course, a big hot button. We have 28,000 people in Orange County that have filed for unemployment. 28,000. Last year, in that same period, it was about 1,800. That tells you, obviously, a huge shift here. One of the things, of course, we've helped people through are the financial assistance, the PPP, EIDL, PUA, UI, and now OCFC, IDA, all that. We have had, just in the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Plan, that is the SBA's main program, a forgivable loan intended to help employers bring back their staff. Well over $200 million has flowed into the county to local businesses through those programs, the PPP and EIDL. And of course, Orange County IDA, I don't want steal their thunder, but their loan program has been certainly it was something people really were longing for and really happy it came, and it seems like they've hit the target audience they were intended for. So that's basically, in addition to that, I have spoken to most of you on the legislature, frankly. As always, I appreciate that. I get calls from you, or I can call on you. I've talked to many of you throughout this, looking to help your constituents, your businesses. So, that's been appreciated as well. Next, just talking about reopening. Again, that's really what the main concern is. So before I do that, I am going to share my screen, and I am going to just show you the county website really quickly. There we go. Apologize. Just want to make sure, and again, I'll describe for folks that are only listening in. I'm on the Orange County website, orangecountygov.com. Right, you cannot miss it. Like most websites on the planet right now, there's a COVID notice right on the front. You click on that, COVID-19 update. That brings you to the county's COVID page. And there are a number of updates on here. And I just want to take you down to this section here where all these kind of icons. So if folks that are listening, click on COVID. You scroll down a little bit, you'll see all these little icons for help with testing, food assistance, understanding the executive orders, you want to volunteer or donate, whatever it might be, and economic assistance. That one actually happens to be the second little icon on there. And there's all sorts of information on these programs I'm talking about, banks that are participating. If you're looking for work, I'm going kind of quickly here. And at the bottom here, it's got our contact information. Myself, again, Steve Knob, Amanda Dana. We've all given out our cell phones, which we gladly are doing so that people can call us, and we're encouraging them to stay in touch with us and to call us back, let us know how they're doing. A lot have given us updates on the successes they've had in getting some of this financial assistance. So that's been a really good thing. I'm going to shift now to reopening. There's no denying the fact that a lot of the information has come from New York State. Of course, the governor and the state, they are running all of this. We're really dependent upon them, however frustrating it might be waiting for these timelines. I am sharing the page to the New York Forward guidelines. That is, but I recommend to a lot of people, rather than me telling you the address, I would just Google that, COVID NY Forward. There is a whole, what I'm showing right now, there's a whole guide here that really is for the different regions and goes into a lot of detail of how the state has been dealing with this, where we're going now, and how everyone fits in. There's that. I want to talk about the region quickly. I think most of you know the state has followed the same organization they've done for economic development programs, like the CFA, for example. So there are 10 regions throughout the state. We are in the Mid-Hudson, of course, not just ourselves, but Westchester, Rockland, Ulster, Dutchess, Sullivan, and Putnam. I know a lot of people are concerned because we're tied in with the Westchester and Rockland, and for the right reason, but I will say that we've got plenty of cases on our own here, about 10,000 cases. So that's more than many states. So we certainly have to get to the right metrics ourselves. Speaking of, again, a lot of people know this, but I'll just make sure you do. There are 7 major metrics that are being charted by the state that really kind of show where we are, where each region is with the curve, respective curve in their region as far as COVID goes. Showing them right here: decline in hospitalizations, decline in deaths, new hospitalizations, hospital bed capacity. You need at least 30% available in the region, and the same capacity for ICU, 30% must be available. There has to be sufficient diagnostic testing and contact tracing. I'm going to take you up, again, those that can see it, to a dashboard. This is also something you can Google, NY Forward Regional Dashboard, something like that. We're right here in the middle. I can't highlight it for you to see, but Mid-Hudson. This is a chart. This dashboard is constantly updated. I think it's in real time here. But when our metrics change, you're going to see them updated. Again, there are 7 kind of gates or hurdles we have to overcome. Right now, we're at 4 out of 7. We were at 5 out of 7 for a bit. We were headed for a projected opening of phase 1 on May 25th, which was looking good. However, you have to have a 14-day decline in hospital deaths or hospitalizations, and ours peaked again, and We were not declining, so we had to restart that. On Friday, we restarted the 14 days we need to get to. So we're 3 days in. So we're at least another week from opening. And again, that's phase one. Let me jump to that, talking about the phases. It will be, no matter what region you're in, obviously including ours, when the state allows you to reopen, you start with phase one and you can't move on to phase two until the state tells you to. Cuomo said that it's going to be generally 2 weeks between phases. Could be a little more, could be a little less. As usual, it's not completely clear. We've spoken, of course, at length with Dr. Gelman about this, the county's commissioner of public health. She's pretty confident that it's going to stay around 2 weeks, and that 2 weeks is not just arbitrary. It's based upon, watching the impact of the first phase. You have 2 weeks to see how it impacts the virus, of what if it causes spikes or not. And that 2 weeks really allows you enough time to look at that. So that's the idea. Phase one, for those that aren't looking on my screen here, is construction, manufacturing, retail, curbside pickup, wholesale trade, and agriculture, forestry, fishing, and hunting. They have, I'm going to scroll down here, they have, as the phase one is now open for a number of regions, I think 5 regions, they've broken it down. What does construction consist of? Further description on agriculture and forestry, retail trade, again, only curbside and delivery at this point, in manufacturing as well. They do specify all of that. Again, we're hoping to get to phase one in the next week or so. Again, after about 2 weeks, we'll go to phase two. That's professional services. Most of the offices, you imagine, it does seem to include hair salons. We've spoken to many of them during this time, because it's been a tough go for them for sure. And many of those folks aren't prepared to go several weeks without revenue. Phase three is restaurants and food services, with much changes for sure. We've heard different numbers, but 25% seating capacity they'll have to open with. That's all seems to be fluid. But you'll see very different approach in restaurants and food service, but it will be opening back up in phase three. In phase four, it'll take the longest for arts, entertainment, recreation, and such. So that's that. Let's see. The last thing I want to mention is actually helping businesses reopen. That's certainly something that a role we're trying to play, and where we're placing more emphasis. Where I think financial assistance is mostly done, except for a lot of people concerned with their PPP, the forgiveness requirements on their PPP. I'm not going to delve into that, but we've been helping people see the regulations that are available on that clearly. Some are not yet set, and we've referred them to different webinars that touch on that subject, including the IDA and their accelerator. They have one coming up on Thursday for that. But it is clear when we're opening, we want to guide these local businesses. I'm showing a FAQ sheet for reopening. Again, I'd Google that, NY Forward FAQ. You see these various questions that are on here that are answers to businesses. You can refer them to this webpage if they have questions about when can they open, what will it entail, or you can absolutely send them to me. I'll do that, explain what I know, what I don't know, I'll send them elsewhere or get an answer for them. This FAQ is helpful. One of the things that leads you to, is my last item I'm going to show, is a business reopening safety plan template. Every business and industry actually has to have a plan in place for implementing the right safety precautions so that they can protect not only their employees, but of course their customers when they are operating. And the safety plan, we've been trying to collect different boilerplate versions of that. The Benuros did one that a lot of people have seen on the hospitality industry. We were gathering some others, but last week the state put out a template basically, and I'm showing that now. There's also a questionnaire to affirm once your sector is deemed open, you can go on, answer some questions, and just get an affirmation that you're ready to go. This safety plan again must be not submitted to the state. Frankly, they're not accepting them. You fill it out, and you could be asked for it by the state DOH, by our local Department of Health, by a building inspector. It sounds like it's open for various kind of jurisdictions there. But this definitely helps people on physical social distancing, masks and such. Obviously PPE is mentioned here, hygiene and cleaning, and then really communication. How businesses really should communicate these new practices and such to their employees and to the consumers that they're going to be serving. So there are a lot of guidelines now that have come out. It was sketchy and frustrating for a while because, again, it was coming out in drips and drabs. we're getting a lot more information, and we're able to continue to communicate with businesses that are looking for this guidance. So I think that's most of it that I've gone over. And if anyone has any other questions on these topics or anything else.
Okay, yeah, I'll open it up to questions. If anyone has any? Nope. All right, Bill, I want to thank you again for providing the update. And I know, as you mentioned, you've talked to several legislators. You're always available for questions if anyone has any, down the road. So again, thank you, and we'll look forward to your report next month.
Thanks very much. Take care, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda, we have Mary Ellen Rogalski, Chairwoman of the IDA, along with Lori Villasuso and Vinnie Casalino, for an update on the IDA loan program, as well as other programs you have available to local businesses. So, Mary Ellen, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chairman Riskevich. I'm going to try to keep my excuse me, my report brief, because a lot of what I'm going to say is going to sound very similar to what Bill Fioravanti said, because we're doing some of the same things. But we've been very, very active in working closely with companies. Once the COVID thing happened, we went on what we call the Business Outreach Response Program. And we, met with a number of companies to help them apply for the CARES Act monies and the PPP Act monies. We helped identify obstacles and remove them and other problems they were having, specific individuals. We got some assistance from both the U.S. Senate and the Assembly from our representatives who put us in touch with folks directly with the SBA. We created a whole section on our website related to COVID information and other job information, rather, because that, luckily a lot of our accelerator clients actually pivoted and got into doing PPE manufacturing and other kinds of things, and have several job opportunities available. So, we did host the small business webinars. Our webinars have been very well attended. So far, we've had over 750 folks there. And again, principally related to the SBA PPE programs and others, and questions associated with that. There's a lot of uncertainty right now about the grant funding or the forgiveness of the loans. And most of the companies or folks that have attended that have expressed their concern with respect to that, and rightfully so, because even the SBA isn't sure what they're going to do. So I think that's going to be very challenging and problematic. So we have, put processes in place to hold these folks' hand, help them with documentation, and, get them prepared to do that. And then, of course, the main thing that we did was, we rolled out the OCFC loan program, the $500,000, which was the most we were able to do. I'm happy to say that we have approved almost all of the $500,000, and most of it has already been deployed. Our folks were able to develop an application, get a policy, put together, a process for processing payments, getting loan documents put together in under 30 days. And we processed over 140 companies that applied for pre-screening, and we ended up with, 172 rather, that applied for pre-screening. And of those, we ended up with, we got 50 completed applications, I think, in 2 or 3 days of rolling it out. We've approved almost all of those, and most of the money has been out. We have another loan committee, a short loan committee scheduled for tomorrow, which will use up the rest of the money that we've done. And I'm happy to say that we really tried to think about what was the best way to deploy that money. And, we came up with the notion that the mom and pop businesses and the Main Street businesses are really the ones that are going to benefit from it, because $10,000 is not a lot of money, but it can have a big impact on those kinds of companies. And that's exactly where our money went. We ended up with, and most of the businesses were very mature businesses that have been around for a long time. Hair salons, professional services. We had 11 retailers, 4 daycare centers, and 12 miscellaneous. We had 8 restaurants and bars, two trucking companies. So they really sort of ran the gamut. But, I'm very pleased with the way that went, not only from a procedural standpoint, but that we were able to very quickly deploy it. I mean, I think from the time we announced the program, We had it up and running and funded in 35 days, which, compared to what the business world would do, that was a phenomenal achievement. And I'm very happy about that. One of the things that flushed out during that is that our AWOW program, which is the Accelerator Without Walls, we had principally been using that for manufacturers, and that's basically where the IDA, through its resources, provides consulting services to manufacturers that they might not either otherwise be able to afford or have the time to consider. And what we gleaned from the discussions we had from the loan applicants is that they too could benefit from that. So our board has decided to permit the expansion of the AWOW services, and to help folks get funding sources, federal grants and loans, help them create jobs. And so it goes, not just to manufacturing, but it also goes to Main Street businesses. We were able to help a lot of companies pivot, and that is, they stop doing what they're doing today and take a 180-degree turn and use the resources they have available to do other things such as PPE and others. And there were a lot of, there was 30 jobs created. We helped 190 plus companies retain existing jobs, both through our help with the PPP programs and others. And again, we deployed the $500,000 in loans, which we're really, really proud of. So I will stop there, and I'll be happy to answer any and all questions you have.
Okay, thank you for that update. With that, I'll open it up to questions. Okay, well, that's a pretty good update.
I guess so. Either that or you guys are tired, one or the other.
Yeah, no, I appreciate all the work that the IDA is doing and getting the loan program out, especially, and also with all the other programs that you have available to small businesses. I think the results show that it, there's been a great interest in it, and it is a benefit to these small businesses. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. We think that we got the word out a lot more too. So I think smaller businesses will look to us as a resource, which we're ready to help them anytime we can.
Okay, and as you mentioned, I assume you anticipate expending the rest of the $500,000 in the loan program.
It's almost all out now. We only have, I think, what Lori and Vinny can help me out here, but I think it's less than $50,000. So, we have loans in queue that will use up all of that money. Okay. So we expect to be fully funded by the approved this week, and then however long it takes to close those particular loans.
Okay, so it sounds like the demand is greater than what's available, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Chairman.
Yes.
Chairman. Yeah, I'd just like to thank Mary Ellen and Vinny and Lori for the fantastic job they did with the loan program. Took many hours and a lot of meetings and quite a bit of work, and and just the webinars and everything they've done during the whole crisis. I'm in awe. I really am. Can't thank them enough. And as Mary Ellen alluded, it's turned a lot of heads in the business community, and they are going to look to the IDA and the Accelerator as a resource. Very impressive, and I can't thank you enough.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay. Well, thank you for the update, and I'm sure if legislators have questions, I'll be reaching out to you. So thank you.
All right. Great. Thank you.
Okay. With that, our agendas are clear, so I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Cheney,
So moved.
Okay.
Second, Menuda.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
You too. Take care.